Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine. Okay, so today we are going to try and understand a little bit from the chapter 12, Canto 6, Vṛtrāsura's glorious death. And right, Vṛtrāsura's glorious death is what we are reading about. So, I won't go into the background much because you already know what's happening here. Vṛtrāsura is fighting Indra. The background you've already gone through. And as Dharmendra Prabhu said, you've also recited the verses on Tuesday. So we'll just start by understanding, first of all, Vṛtrāsura is a demon. And yet the chapter is entitled Vṛtrāsura's glorious death. So the question is, is Vṛtrāsura a demon or a devotee? That's what we need to, that's why we are studying this. So in the previous chapter, I think your last chapter ended with, I believe, prayers that Vṛtrāsura was reciting to the Supreme Lord. If I'm not mistaken, that's what it ended with, right? Let's just see. Let me just go to... Second, give me just 1 minute. Yeah. So chapter 11 was called the Transcendental Qualities. And that's when you were discussing, that's when actually Vṛtrāsura is reciting the prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then just this chapter, I want to start with how he's fighting with Lord Indra, and he's asking Indra to kill him now. So he's actually waiting for his death in one sense. And that is why you can also think about this chapter as Vṛtrāsura waiting to go back to Godhead in one sense, right? And I'm just going to read the first verse of this, the translation. So it says, Sukadev Goswami said, desiring to give up his body, Vṛtrāsura considered death in the battle preferable to victory. O King Parikshit, he vigorously took up his trident and with great force attacked Lord Indra, the king of heaven, just as Kaitaba had forcefully attacked the Supreme Personality of Godhead when the universe was inundated. So, in this section, actually, what we are seeing is how one should do our work dutifully, with detachment, and with the devotion. So, overall theme is that in the end, towards the end, we have to depend on Krishna, but we also have to continue to perform our duty with detachment, knowing that Lord Krishna is the controller. He is going to control everything, right? So, Vṛtrāsura, what he's doing is he he wants to he's also, so in the, and I think in the previous chapter you all heard that um, he is actually asking Indra or encouraging Lord Indra to fight, to not, to perform the duty that he's supposed to do, because Lord Indra is supposed to fight with Vṛtrāsura, but Lord Indra is kind of hesitating. And why he's hesitating is because he's thinking, how can he harm a devotee? How can he kill a devotee? And this shows parallels to what we've studied before in the Bhagavad Gita. Uh, you remember, some of you may remember how in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is facing the same kind of dilemma. He's also thinking that, here all these devotees are standing in front of me, and how can I harm these devotees? So Indra is kind of going through the same thing, right? And then we see that in how Indra is, he eventually, of course, he says, he exclaims that, okay, oh sinful one, I shall kill you. And Indra then takes his trident and takes his thunderbolt, and he's fighting with Vṛtrāsura. He cuts off Vṛtrāsura's arms also, right? And then Vṛtrāsura is also trying to kill Indra, and there is this whole fight going on. And in fact, the demigods are lamenting because they are thinking that Indra is in a very difficult position, and the demigods are lamenting that, oh, now Indra is going to die, because what Vṛtrāsura does is, although his arm is cut off, he still strikes Airavat, the elephant of Indra. And Indra, obviously then the thunderbolt falls from his hand, and everybody thinks that Indra is in a difficult position. And here also, what is Vṛtrāsura doing at this time? When Indra is kind of, thunderbolt has fallen, his elephant has been struck. And I will just repeat this. I will just say these, the words that Vṛtrāsura is saying to Indra. He's encouraging Indra. This is in verse 6. He's encouraging Indra because Indra is now like, he feels defeated, he feels ashamed. But what Vṛtrāsura is saying, take up your thunderbolt and kill your enemy. This is not the time for lamentation. And before we move on to the next set of verses, because this is the first set of verses 1 to 6. Now, what we learn from here, where Vṛtrāsura is saying to Indra, take up your thunderbolt and kill your enemy. This is not the time for lamentation. Here we understand that no matter what position we are put in, we still have to perform our prescribed duties. Sometimes we may think that things are beyond our control. The fact is that at all times things are beyond our control and Krishna is the controller. But many times when things are going our way, we think that we are the controllers, right? So, with this, what is happening over here, the lesson that we should be taking away is that at all times, Krishna is the controller. And if we depend on Krishna at all times and yet continue to perform our duties with detachment to the results, right? that is how one can actually continue in this material world. Knowing that I'm not in control, Krishna is the controller. However, I cannot sit back. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna was encouraging Arjuna to fight, at one point, if all of you remember, because you've studied the Bhagavad Gita, at one point, Krishna actually showed his Virat Rupa to Arjuna, where Arjuna could see that all these people who are assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and Krishna said that also, that they are already dead. And he could see the all the warriors who were assembled entering the body of Krishna, right? So he's already dead, is what Krishna said. They're already dead, but you still continue your duty. See, sometimes when we face things in our life, um, what we don't see is we don't see the bigger picture, and either we get too overwhelmed by what we see in front of us, what we have to do, or sometimes we get overconfident. In both cases, whether we are overwhelmed or we are overconfident, if we remember Krishna and take shelter of Krishna, then we will be able to perform our duty the way it is meant to be, which is with detachment to the results and with dependence to Krishna. So, 2 points: dependence and detachment. Now, the next couple of verses from 7 to 17, Vṛtrāsura enlightens the discouraged Indra. These verses, Vṛtrāsura is only encouraging Krishna, and that is why uh, right at the beginning I said, is Vṛtrāsura a demon or a devotee? Because you've read the verses from 7 to 17, where actually Vṛtrāsura is talking about how anything is possible only if one is dependent on the Lord, right? So, verse 7 talks about how you will get a continuous victory. And how is that possible? Because you have to depend on the Lord. If you are, um, you know, you may have all the weapons in the world, you may be a great warrior, you will have, you may think that you've done all your preparations, but if you don't have the Lord with you, sometimes you may be victorious, but sometimes you will be defeated. And again, we can take the example of the war at Kurukshetra. Arjuna was victorious because Krishna was with him. Duryodhan had a much larger army. He had great warriors with him. They knew how to conduct a war. If you think from a material point of view, when you're ticking the boxes that, I have this, I have this, I have this, I have this, in order to win, yes, everything was tick marked. All what is needed was there. All the ingredients was there. But Duryodhan did not win because he didn't have Krishna with him. And Vṛtrāsura is saying exactly the same thing, that you will only be able to continuously win against your enemies if the Lord is with you and if you are fully dependent on the Lord, right? And then Vṛtrāsura goes on to talk about how time controls all the living entities. Time is actually the cause of victory or defeat. There is nothing greater than time. And I just want to read the translation of translation of verse 7. So give me one moment. Let me just go to verse 7. Sorry, not verse 7, verse 8. Yeah. Verse 8 says, translation, Vṛtrāsura continued, O Indra, no one is guaranteed of being always. Am I reading verse 8 or 7? No, sorry, I want to read verse 8. Okay, verse 8 says, all living beings in all the planets of this universe, including the presiding deities of all the planets, are fully under the control of the Lord. They work like birds caught in a net who cannot move independently. This analogy is so beautiful because sometimes we forget. Although we are aware and everybody talks about this, and we all will use this analogy, not even a blade of grass moves without the control of the Lord. But, and I say this for myself, perhaps some of you on the forum will agree, we tend to forget and we think that we are independent. We are doing things on our own. And here, when Vṛtrāsura is saying this, and I like the point that is being made, is that they work like birds caught in a net who cannot move independently. So we are exactly like that. We have this thought that we are independent, we can control the situation, but we are exactly like birds caught in a net. The only difference is that when the birds are caught in a net, they don't even have that minute independence where they can flap their wings. We are allowed to flap our hands and legs and do things where we start thinking that, oh yes, I'm the controller. And imagine these teachings are being given by Vṛtrāsura to Indra being the demigod, a great devotee of Krishna, right? But Vṛtrāsura is no less. He's also a great devotee of Krishna, right? So foolish people sometimes thinks that this material body that we have is the cause of all activities, forgetting that actually the supreme cause is the Lord, right? Okay, so let's move on. And I will just go to text 11. So in text 11, Vṛtrāsura is saying that sorry, one second. Okay, no, we've already discussed that how Krishna is the controller, and we've also spoken about text 12 says this. I'll repeat text 12 so that I'm just reiterating some of the facts that we already know and you've heard. So just the translation of text 12, it says, a foolish, senseless person cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although always dependent, he falsely thinks himself the Supreme. If one thinks, according to one's previous fruitive actions, one's material body is created by the father and mother and the same body is annihilated by another agent, as another animal is devoured by a tiger, this is not proper understanding. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself creates and devours the living beings through other living beings. So, the whole point again and again in this chapter, in all of these verses, is how Krishna is the controller and how we need to constantly depend on Krishna. Okay, so let's move on. So, what we are seeing over here is just one second. What we're seeing over here and what we're learning from Vṛtrāsura. So first we spoke about the dependence. Second, we spoke about the detachment. Now, the third that we are seeing is this understanding that this body is nothing. This material body that we think is something that I shouldn't even use the word that something that I own, but where we have full dependence on this material body, realizing that this material body actually is going to is just bones and skin and all of that stuff, and it is temporary. So understanding that ultimately I am going to give up this body, and then um, understanding the goal. So what Vṛtrāsura is saying over here in verse 15, and that is the vision of a liberated person. And I'll just read the verse 15. So verse 15 is saying that when one understands that this pure soul is simply an observer of the actions and reactions, So he is not bound by any of these qualities or by any of these activities of this material body, right? Vṛtrāsura is going on to speak to Indra with, you know, he goes on to say that here I am. You have actually, chopped off my arm. Yeah, here it is, text 16. Thank you, Dharmendra Prabhu. This is brilliant. See, Vṛtrāsura is saying that you've chopped off my arm, you've cut them to pieces, but I'm still trying my best to fight. I am not at all morose. And why I am not morose, that's the point that we need to understand. And Prabhupada explains it, and our various acharyas explain it. Why I am not morose, Vṛtrāsura explains why he's not morose is because he's understood that it doesn't matter what happens to this particular body, because my goal is not to maintain this body. My goal is to go back to Godhead. So, in one sense, when we read this, the chapter title, Vṛtrāsura's Glorious Death, one can also understand this chapter by thinking Vṛtrāsura's glorious death or his goal of going back to Godhead. And that is why he's encouraging Indra, fight with me, kill me, because he knows that when I give up this body, as a devotee, all of us should be thinking like that, when I give up this body, our goal, our prayer should be that I go back to Godhead. And again, and this is very, very important to understand, the reason is not because I want something. The reason is because I always constantly want to serve my Lord. Vṛtrāsura is a devotee of the Lord. And the only reason why he wants to go back to the spiritual world or go back to Godhead is because in the spiritual world, one can serve the Lord unconditionally, without any motivations, without any obstruction in his life. So the goal of a devotee is that I am able to serve the Lord. And thus, his only desire, whether he's in a good position or in a bad position, is how can I do service? How can I constantly serve my Lord? Okay. So again, just recapping some of the points that we're taking away from Vṛtrāsura's death, because this chapter really is about learning what, or trying to understand what we can learn from Vṛtrāsura's death, and thereby understanding why it is so glorious. So we learned that we have to perform our duties with detachment, being dependent on the Lord, understanding this material body is temporary, knowing that the goal is to reach the spiritual world or to go back to Godhead. However, in all cases, to be thinking about how I can serve the Lord, whether in this body or in another body. So these are some points from 7 to 17. Then the next section, 18 to 22. Now what's happening over here? Dharmendra Prabhu, if you could just share the verses from 18. Yeah, just that section. Thank you. Yeah, so now what's happening over here is this section actually is you could put it in a section of where Indra praises Vṛtrāsura. So all these verses are where Indra actually, after hearing all these instructions from Vṛtrāsura, he's thinking about what a great devotee Vṛtrāsura is, which we already realized. And after hearing all these instructions, King Indra praised him and again took the thunderbolt in his hand. By hearing these motivational words, by hearing these straightforward instructions, how one should not give up his duty, one should fight, and by taking inspiration from Vṛtrāsura, who'd already lost his arms, but he was still trying to fight, Indra again picks up his thunderbolt. And when he picks up his thunderbolt, he is no longer bewildered. He is no longer confused, right? And he then actually praises the demon. He says that, you know, I can see your um, uh, your endurance in devotional service. I can see your determination in devotional service, right? Now, Dharmendra Prabhu, that's okay. We can go back to, yeah, we can go back to just not sharing. Now, uh, when Indra starts praising Vṛtrāsura, he knows he's a demon. Demons generally are very self-centered and selfish. They don't care about anybody, they care about themselves. They're full of ego, they're very proud, they are envious of others, anybody who can do better. What we're seeing, Vṛtrāsura is completely opposite, right? And thus Indra goes on to say that although you are a demon, who should normally, who's influenced by passion, by the idea of lording it over, by the idea of being the controller. But here you've completely fixed your mind in the Supreme Lord. So actually you are in a Suddha Sattva state, even above the mode of goodness. Now we've studied all these modes, right? Ignorance, passion, and goodness. So Indra is praising Vṛtrāsura that you are in the Suddha Sattva state. You are so fixed, and you have taken complete shelter of the Supreme Lord, and you are a person who's fixed in bhakti, in devotional service, right? Um, so, and I keep repeating all these points because by the end of the lesson, when we reflect on what we are taking away, I'm hoping that all of you will remember all these qualities of Vṛtrāsura and take this away, right? So in these particular set of verses, what we are learning is complete dedication in our devotional service, right? Um, Reaching a state where our shelter, our only shelter, is our service to the Lord. Okay? And I just want to read the verse 22. You don't have to share the screen, Dharmendra Prabhu. It is okay. Because in verse 22, the Sanskrit and the English is very beautiful. So I'll just go to verse 22. Okay. Yeah. So verse 22, the Sanskrit, I'll read the Sanskrit and then we can, just take the English translation. I'll read 2 lines and then like that. So, yeah, verse 22, the first 2 lines. Yasya bhaktir bhagavati haro nishreya sheshware. Now, what that means is a person fixed in devotional service or bhakti to the Supreme Lord Hari, the Lord of the highest auspiciousness. What happens with this kind of person? Vikrita domritam bodho kim shutre katakodakai. He swims in the ocean of nectar. For him, what is the use of water in small ditches? Now, this is such a beautiful analogy. And Prabhupada in the purport says, a pure devotee is never attracted to any exalted position within this material world. And why is he not attracted to anything within this material world? Because he is actually, he's understood that this material world is like water in small ditches. He's got the opportunity to swim in the ocean of nectar. This analogy is so beautiful. So when somebody has got the opportunity to be in an ocean of nectar, why will he waste his time in these small ditches? And these words are as an appreciation. Indra is using this for Vṛtrāsura. So he's saying that pure devotees swim in the ocean of nectar. And that is why they don't waste time in this small ditches of the material world like that. And then the next section, or the last section of this chapter, is verses 23 to 35, wherein Indra actually will kill Vṛtrāsura. So what happens now is that the fight resumes, right? So obviously Indra was discouraged. His thunderbolt had fallen off. Vṛtrāsura has got his arms chopped off, but he's still fighting. Here are these two great warriors, at the same time great devotees of the Lord. They are fighting not for any kind of self-pride or to prove that they are the controllers, but they are fighting in with the sense of understanding that what we are doing right now is service to the Lord, and we are doing this with full dependence on the lotus feet of the Lord. And thus they resume fight. So when a person is performing any of his duties, understanding that this duty is for the service of the Lord, then that is called dharma. We cannot say that any fight is dharmic. And that is why Prabhupada used to say that when Prabhupada used to give his classes or in his purports, you will read that in those times also there were, people were talking about world war. And if you remember, um, in one of the, I don't remember whether it was in a conversation or in Lilamrit. No, in Lilamrit, Prabhupada talks about how when he was in Calcutta, he was still he hadn't renounced. He was in Calcutta, and they were talking about the war. What if the war happens? Or I think it was like that. And Prabhupada, when he was speaking to his disciples, he said, even then, I just depended on Lord Krishna. But anyways, we're not talking about that. What I'm trying to say is that, especially why I'm talking about war, is today everywhere, all corners of the world, we can see that, there's wars happening, and this country fighting with another country. But today's wars are not just to establish dharma. They're more about, getting something for yourself. It is not a service for the Supreme Lord. But when we look at the Battle of Kurukshetra, we know that Krishna was encouraging Arjuna to fight because it was about establishing the principles. It was principles of dharma. It was because wrong was happening, and that is why the war was to take place. So here also you will see that both Vṛtrāsura and Indra are fighting this battle, or fighting against each other as a service to the Lord, right? It is not for your own personal self. So verse 23 talks about this, that it's about devotional service even on the battlefield. When I read this verse, I was thinking, here are these two great warriors. They are performing devotional service on the battlefield. And what excuse do all of us have in our personal lives to not perform devotional service each and every single day of our lives, even when we are performing our various duties and responsibilities? So hold this thought, because what we'll do is, after we finish the session, we will have a little bit of a discussion about this particular thought, because this is very, very important for all of us, right? So now Vṛtrāsura, he's got his one arm chopped off. So with the other arm, he is throwing his club at Indra with his left hand, and slowly, I mean, there is this whole thing happening. Indra is fighting with him with his thunderbolt, and it says in these verses that Vṛtrāsura, I will just go to these verses, and Dharmendra Prabhu, if you would just share the verses 26, verse 26, please, on your screen. Yes. Now, this is a very beautiful description. Now, look at this, verse 26. It says, Vṛtrāsura, bleeding profusely, his two arms cut off at their roots, looked very beautiful, like a flying mountain whose wings have been cut to pieces by Indra. So, although his arms have been cut off, even then Vṛtrāsura is standing tall. And the description that is being used is like a mountain whose wings have been cut off. So even then, he did not give up his duty. Even then, he was not discouraged. Because you know why? Because he was actually waiting. Right at the beginning of this chapter, you remember he was encouraging Indra, kill me. He wasn't afraid of death. He wasn't afraid of death because he knew where he is going. He knew what his ultimate destination was. He knew what his goal is. So he was not afraid of death. So, lesson to be learned from, again, from here, from this incident is, as devotees, we may not know our ultimate goal in one sense, but we must have this faith that wherever we go after this life, once we take shelter of the Lord, once we surrender at His lotus feet, we must have this faith that Krishna will only give us what is right for us. So we are learning this from Vṛtrāsura's death, where he's standing tall, he's not scared, he's not worried because he has taken shelter of the Lord. Doesn't matter, what's going to happen. We learn this from also Parikshit Maharaj. The whole Bhagavatam is being spoken to Parikshit Maharaj just 7 days. So the Bhagavatam starts 7 days before Parikshit Maharaj is due to die. At that time, Parikshit Maharaj is not scared. He's not worried. He's not thinking about his family or his riches or his body, his wealth, nothing. What he has done, surrendered completely to the Lord, listening to Krishna Katha, knowing that whatever his destination is after these 7 days, Krishna will only do what is right for him. And that is the faith that we as devotees have to develop. That knowing that, yes, whatever happens, it will be right for me. Okay. So then, okay, what happens next? His arms are being cut off, and one would think that, okay, now he's going to just fall down to his death. But what Vṛtrāsura does is he actually swallows Indra along with the great elephant Airavat. He's swallowing Indra and the elephant Airavat, right? And obviously, all the demigods who are watching from the skies, along with Brahma and everybody, they become very morose and they are calling out, what a calamity! What has happened here? This demon has now swallowed Indra. What is going to happen next? Indra is dead, and the everybody is lamenting, everybody is crying, just like how a python will swallow an elephant. That's how Vṛtrāsura has swallowed Indra and the elephant. Now, again over here, you see, for a devotee like Indra, everybody's heard of the Kavaj. Kavaj is what? A protective armor. When warriors go on battlefield, they wear this great armor which is made of metal. But here we are talking about the Kavaj of the Lord Himself. Like in verse 31, it says, the protective armor of Narayan which Indra possessed. Maybe some of you know about the Narayan Kavach or the other prayers or Kavach that we recite for protection, even when we are praying to Narsingadev. So we are actually asking for the protection of Lord Narsingadev, through these prayers. So it says here that obviously King Indra was protected by the Narayan armor or the prayers. And so he did not die. Although he was in the belly of Vṛtrāsura, he did not die. And what King Indra did is, with his thunderbolt, he pierced through Vṛtrāsura's abdomen and he came out, right? And then he chopped off Vṛtrāsura's head, he killed Vṛtrāsura, and Vṛtrāsura at a suitable time and whatever else, his head fell to the ground and he died. And then obviously, we hear about how everybody is showering praises on Lord Indra, and everybody is very happy that this has happened. But what happens with Vṛtrāsura's body? And this is again important to understand. And this is in verse 35, where it says that the living spark came forth from Vṛtrāsura's body and returned home back to Godhead. Right? And this is exactly what Vṛtrāsura was waiting for. This is what he wanted. He wanted to go back to Godhead. Right? And then obviously the last verse says, this is translation I'll read. O King Parikshit, subduer of enemies, the living spark then came forth from Vṛtrāsura's body and returned home back to Godhead. While all the demigods looked on, he entered the transcendental world to become an associate of Lord Shankarshan. So now the first verse where he says to Indra, kill me, because he was waiting to go back to his original place, which is to be serving Lord Shankarshan. See, the first verse says, desiring to give up his body, Vṛtrāsura considered death in the battle preferable to victory. The reason is he wanted death because with his death, he knew that he would be going back to his eternal service of being with Lord Shankarshan. And that is what he wanted to do. So now, again, just to recap all the things that we have learned from this particular chapter from Vṛtrāsura's death, and then we'll come to discussions and whatever. So first thing we learned is that we have to perform our duties knowing that we are fully dependent on the Lord. Giving up the duties is not an option, but performing them by giving up attachment to the results is the point that we learn. So being detached from the results. Understanding that this material body is temporary. Knowing what the goal of me, that is this soul, is. I'm not the body, I'm the soul. And the goal of the soul is to be with the super soul, wherever that may be. Right? In the case of Vṛtrāsura, with Lord Shankarshan. So knowing that the goal of this soul is to be in the service of the Lord, wherever the Lord decides. Having faith in the Lord that whatever he does for us will be ultimately good. We spoke about time also, that it is time. It is time that controls everything. We are not the controller, right? What else did we take away from here? Yes, we also learned from Vṛtrāsura that in good or in bad times, fixing our mind on the Supreme Lord, being in the state of Suddha being fixed in our devotional service, always. Okay. And then what else did we learn? I think these were some of the points or some of the takeaways from today, unless somebody else has made some points and will like to share. But this is what I remember from our talks. And we've got some time now, almost around 10 minutes, 12 minutes to have some kind of discussions and question and answers. And there was one point that I said we will discuss after our session. So we will do that once we have question answers, if that's okay. Is that okay, Dharmendra Prabhu?
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Madhu Kamari Mataji,
And
for that.
please do forgive me and bear with me. I have literally just landed from India yesterday. I've been in India for almost 6 weeks. My mother was very unwell. So I went there as an emergency, landed back yesterday, had some service in the morning. So didn't really have a lot of time to kind of, prepare and go in detail, but tried my best. So please do forgive me.
No,
Yes.
that was a perfect class. Thank you very much, Mataji, and apologies about keeping you, in this position. Vijay Krishna Prabhu, would you like to ask your question, please?
Yes, Dharmendra Prabhu, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, do you mind sharing text 21?
Okay, just bear with me. Okay, there you go, Prabhu.
Yes, Madhu Mataji, do you mind reading it again?
Yes, definitely. The translation. O Vṛtrāsura, demons are generally conducted by the mode of passion. Therefore, what a great wonder it is that although you are a demon, you have adopted the mentality of a devotee and have fixed your mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudev, who is always situated in pure goodness.
Yeah, thank you very much, your most kind Dandabat Pranams. Mataji, in accordance with this translation, I see that the ones who are conducted by the mode of passion are called demons. The ones who are conducted by the mode of goodness and pure goodness are called devotees. But my question would be, how would you call the ones who are conducted by the mode of ignorance, and what are their symptoms?
Interesting. First thing we need to understand, and I'm sure you know this, so I don't have to say this, but mode of goodness, ignorance, and passion does not, any of these modes don't work independently. It's you will see in this material world, it is very rare that any of this mode is working independently. Of course, we are not talking about pure devotees. We are talking about us, all of us. All of us are constantly influenced by passion, ignorance, and goodness. Sometimes goodness is overshadowing the other two. Sometimes the other two may be more strong. And we have to understand that we do need all of these three modes also in our lives. We do need mode of passion in order to motivate ourselves to do things and achieve things. If we don't have that passion, then we won't be able to do that or work. Mode of ignorance is obviously, we have read in the Bhagavad Gita. Will not be able to verbatim quote what are the qualities, but we know that people who are in the mode of mode of ignorance are lazy. They sleep a lot, and I'm just remembering all these qualities that are quoted in the Bhagavad Gita. They don't care about anything. They are, you will see that they are influenced by complete laziness. They don't have the desire to achieve anything. They waste their entire time in just being completely, how do you say, uh, like it says over there, sleeping a lot, not performing any activity. So that these are the kind of people who you can straight away say are under the mode of ignorance.
The word would be lethargic.
Yes, we can call them lethargic. One of the other
Yes.
word that is used is indolent.
Yes, covered by indolence.
That's
Yes.
correct. So those are the kind of words that are used while describing such people who are in the mode of ignorance. We also sometimes are in the mode of ignorance, and it says that at night when we are sleeping. However, for a devotee, everything can be dovetailed towards the service of Krishna. And thus, even our activity of sleeping, because what happens is, as devotees, what we are trying to do is, I am sleeping or I am resting so that when I wake up, my body is fresh in order to perform my service completely in a dedicated and in a fresh mind and body, where I can perform my service to the Lord nicely. So how I can, when we talk about, and we've spoken about Vairagya on this forum also, how you can perform Yukta Vairagya with all your activities, including sleep, which would otherwise come under the influence of mode of ignorance.
Yes, Madhu Mataji, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. A most beautiful and clarifying answer to my question. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you.
If anyone else wishes to ask a question, please raise your hand. If I can ask a question, I've got a couple that I was writing down. Basically, we always talk about how we should be respectful of devotees. In this case, and also, the question is that should we also be careful in our judgment of who we believe are demonic in nature? Because obviously, we're talking about a person here who's demonic, but yet a devotee of the Lord. So this also teaches us not to be judgmental with people.
Actually, this is a very, very wonderful question. It's not like a question, but you're stating a fact. Many of us have this idea that we look at, let's say, people who are not devotees and think of them as being less than us. Many a times when we take to Krishna consciousness, we think that we are superior to some people. And here, like you rightfully are pointing out, Dharmendra Prabhu, is that we don't know. We don't know who is a devotee and who is a demon. Vṛtrāsura was in the garb of a demon, and he was such a great devotee that somebody like Lord Indra was praising him, singing his glories. And here we have so many chapters dedicated to Vṛtrāsura. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam is talking about, what is Srimad Bhagavatam talking about? It's talking about the interaction of devotees with the Lord, right? And in that, we have 4 chapters, I believe, dedicated just to, appearance of Vṛtrāsura, his activities, his glorious death, how he's praying to the Lord. So, the point to take away from is, and Dharmendra Prabhu, so nicely that you picked this up, is that we must never ever judge anybody that you interact with. First thing, we are taught, all of us, and again, like I said, we forget. Krishna is in each and every one of us as the super soul. So as soon as you see any other living entity, when I say any other living entity, I mean any other living entity, be it an animal, a snake, a worm, of course, a human being. Don't look at the living entity for the body. And that is why we address everybody as Prabhu, because we are addressing the super soul in that living entity. It is a very high state of mind to be in, and not easy for all of us. But we have to train ourselves to do that. And again, like Dharmendra Prabhu pointing out, not being judgmental, because we're all here in this material world. We're all engaged in this body, in different bodies, like a bird in a cage, for whatever our past karmas have been. And thus, we don't know what the other person, what his past is, what his present is, and what his future is. And that's why being respectful of everybody is how a Vaishnav should behave. That is a very important quality that all of us should cultivate in ourselves. So yes, good point, Dharmendra Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay. And a second part of the question is, how do we let go, or how do we reduce our desire to be the controller and become more reliant on Krishna as the controller?
So I'll tell you what happens is that first, and this, when we started our Krishna conscious journey, I remember when we started the study of the Bhagavad Gita, the statement that was made by our teacher was, at least theoretically believe that Krishna is the supreme. By the end of the study of Bhagavad Gita, you will start to feel it or experience it. So, same way, I'm going to use that same term here. You begin with thinking that I'm not the controller. Maybe you at that moment you don't feel it or realize it or experience it, but at least begin with thinking, okay, I'm not the controller. And slowly, when you start to think like that, there will be experiences that you will encounter where you will start believing it and understanding it. Again, I'll use another example. When at the beginning of anybody's, for all of you, Krishna conscious journey, when you hear that, you must think of Krishna every time, or and there is this verse in the Bhagavad Gita which says, Rasoham Opsukanteya. He says that I am the taste in the water, and you must think of Krishna every time. It's at that time, it's very theoretical. You tell your mind, okay, I have to think of Krishna, I have to think of Krishna, I have to think of Krishna. Over a period of time, by experiencing it, by realizing it, it should become second nature to you. So anytime that you see anybody or you experience anything or you feel anything, you think, oh, this is Krishna doing it, this is Krishna doing it. And that is when you start depending on Krishna and realizing that Krishna is the controller. Like, for instance, this evening I was trying to do something, copy something and paste it somewhere for this presentation. And I've tried and I've tried and I've tried, and it didn't work. It didn't work. And I'm thinking, oh Krishna, you're testing me today. Oh Krishna, please help this. Oh Krishna, please. So, it just comes as second nature that you start depending on Krishna and realizing that, okay, here I am. The simplest act of copy and paste, not working. It's just not happening. So it'll only come with experiencing and then realizing it. So anything, like we say that any knowledge, there is knowledge which is theoretical, and then there is knowledge which will come to you by realizing it. And that becomes then that is something then that will sit with you like that. Yeah. Does that help, Dharmendra Prabhu?
That's so perfect, actually. Yeah. If you want to finish with what you were saying, I don't think anyone else has got their hand up.
Okay, no more questions?
Yeah, no.
Okay, brilliant. So yeah, from Vṛtrāsura's glorious death, obviously we've spoken about all the various things that we take away. The one important thing that I thought I don't remember exactly what my words were, but I think what I was trying to say was, in good or bad, in whatever we are doing, how we have to constantly depend on Krishna's mercy. There's many instances in the Bhagavatam, or we've heard of so many places where we have to endeavor, knowing that the result will come with the mercy of Krishna. That doesn't mean that I sit back. Vṛtrāsura did not sit back. Indra did not sit back. Arjuna did not sit back. Nobody was sitting back. But we all perform our duties knowing that Krishna is the controller and depending on Krishna for whatever he does. Having the faith that whatever happens in our life will be good because Krishna is controlling our life. And when we have that faith, somehow this very difficult journey of life becomes a little bit easier, knowing that, I've got Krishna backing me all the time. And that, I think, is a very beautiful thought to kind of end this session.